Welcome. We have a couple more people in, so thank you for joining our first social distancing book club. So we were just saying hi. Did we want to introduce ourselves just for a couple of seconds and maybe say which branch we typically go to? I'm Morgan. I'm from the Sturgeon Bay branch typically, but I run around between the branches a bit. So thank you for coming.
I'm Tina. I'm located at the Sturgeon Bay branch, but I do get around to all the branches off and on throughout the year.
I'm Laura. I am at the Sturgeon Bay branch, and I've gotten around too, but not lately.
Hi, I'm Anne. You can see my virtual background. It's Northern Sky Theater's lobby. That's where I normally work, except I'm working from home. So I'm using the virtual background to block out my son, who is doing virtual school right now. I live in Sister Bay. I go to the Sister Bay Liberty Grove branch. Love it.
Great.
Part of the Readers Rampant book group up here.
Ah,
Good. Very good. Who would like
Carla
to
Burns down in Sturgeon Bay, go to the Sturgeon Bay Library. Also, I work with Anne.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I also go to the Sturgeon Bay branch. I don't work with any of you, but I enjoy reading, so I'm anxious to hear.
Great. Excuse me, Chandra?
Hi, I'm Chandra. I go mainly to the Sister Bay branch. I live in Sister Bay. Shout out to Anne. We do the book club together. And then a hi to Tracy. I go to Bailey's Harbor Book Club as well. And then I know Morgan for years and years, back to wedding planning and a lot with her husband too. So he's a great photographer if you do not know him.
Some of his work is behind me.
Ah.
I was noticed.
Tracy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy. I'm from the Bailey's Harbor Library.
And it looks like Carl.
It's actually his wife, Kathy.
Okay.
And I usually go to the Sturgeon Bay Library, and I just love it. And Anne invited me, so it's all her fault.
That's because we're in band together.
That's right. We have to see each other some way.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you came to the virtual group here. Carla.
Yes. Oh, I already spoke. I'm down in Sturgeon Bay.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
That's okay.
Beth.
So I work at the Sturgeon Bay Library. I'm the children's librarian, and I've got a thing for fantasy books. So that's mostly what I'm going to talk about.
Cool. Cool. Marie.
I am located in Sturgeon Bay, so I use the Sturgeon Bay branch. I don't work for the library, but I do love to go to the library and use the resources.
Wonderful. And then we have a new person, but she stepped away. So we were talking a little bit while we were all coming in, and some people were saying they were listening to audiobooks while working outside. Has everyone been reading? Do you want to wave your hand if you have?
Oh, yeah.
And puzzles.
Puzzles. I'm scared to put them out with my cat. I don't know if she'll knock them all off.
I cover my table with a tablecloth, and the cat doesn't know they're there.
ah, good idea.
My
That's a
kid's
good idea.
trying to join the meeting.
I see that.
She can.
You'll see him. He's off to the side right now, but he's trying to come in and be part of it, or he just wants to sit in my lap.
That's great. Well, if we want to take turns and talk about the book that we're reading, I'll go really quick. The book that I just finished is called This Mortal Coil. It's a YA book. and so young adult. And I am one of those people that will read pandemic books during a pandemic. So, and I like sci-fi stuff, and this is very much like in the sci-fi realm where it has gene splicing, and the people, the characters in it, there's a mass pandemic that happens when people get sick, they explode, and if you breathe in the aerosol person, you then become sick yourself. And so they've created these bunkers where everyone's hiding, and of course there's a bad guy who's spliced genes weird. There's a whole group that of kids that have been born with gene spliced things that are finding each other throughout the book, and this is the first in a series of 3. I mean, the reason why I read them at this time is that you find a semblance of control, because you know, at least in the book, that they're going to figure out how to fix the problem, and there's a lot of action, so you're always wondering what's going to happen. So that's what I've been reading. Anyone else want to go next?
Sure, I will. I read a book that I just finished, a book that Anne actually recommended on Facebook, I think, Anne. Lost Book of the Holy Grail by Charlie Love, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. It's Arthurian legend and history, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. Charlie Lovett, I discovered when somebody told me I needed to read it. And the first book I read was a Shakespeare called The Bookman's Tale. And it was, it took place in Shakespeare time and in current time, and it was a book mystery, a book collector's mystery. And he's got several other books out right now. So one is a Jane Eyre one. There's the Book of the Grail that you read. There's an Ebenezer Scrooge one. And he's a relatively new at writing novels. And I was bragging all about the first one that I read on social media, and he responded to me. And so he actually, he Skyped into our book club meeting for The Bookman's Tale. And then all of the other books we've read in the book club, he's Skyped into with us. So it's been kind of fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I'm glad to know there are others. I just saw that Bookman's Tale was available, so I thought I'd try that next.
Yeah, it's a good one. For theater-loving people, especially.
And what is the author's name again?
Charlie Lovett, Lovett.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of theater, I would recommend right now, they're not everything's in a book. They're doing a Shakespeare play on the National Theater on YouTube this weekend. It's 12th night. Yesterday was the recognized Shakespeare's birthday. And I just want to point out that over the last year, I've been purchasing upgrades on our Shakespeare books in the library. Individual We had some really old ones. So there's some really beautiful new Folger Shakespeare editions that I've been adding. So if you're interested in Shakespeare, be sure to check those out when the library opens again. The books that I was going to focus on today are historical fiction. We're actually doing them for our book group, and it's kind of a combination of themes. One is this summer is the anniversary of women's vote. So these 2 books have to do with very strong women, which I think is really interesting. And one is the book we're doing for a multicultural book group that's called The Only Woman in the Room, and it's about Hedy Lamarr, who many people don't know was actually a brilliant scientist, starring in movies.
Oh, I think I read that book.
Yeah, come to the book discussion. It's Tuesday, the first Tuesday of May. It'll be online here. So that's one, I mean, a very interesting story there, and that is available on Hoopla if anyone hasn't read it. It's an ebook on Hoopla. And the other one we're doing a little bit later in the month, it's going to be led by John Harris, who does biannual history book discussions. And this is not fiction actually, but it's sort of written in a very readable format. It's called The Woman Who Smashed Codes. And it's about another very strong woman during World War II again, and actually even earlier. She was just brilliant. I can't believe what she did. She was able to, she started again as a Shakespeare scholar in pre-World War I, She was in a Quaker family. They didn't really want her to be educated, but she pushed forward. She ended up at an eccentric place outside of Chicago where this gentleman was bringing in scholars to research. They had a group that was trying to prove Francis Bacon was the author of the Shakespeare plays. And she joined that, and then she met her future husband, William Friedman, and the two of them were brilliant at trying to figure out these codes in the Shakespeare books. They never believed that, but it got them started. And then they both ended up cracking codes during World War I. And then during World War II, she was, they were in different divisions. She worked for the Coast Guard, and she was cracking codes of all of these Japanese and the Nazis. And I just can't understand how someone can do that sort of thing and crack a code in a foreign language that's multi-leveled. But she did it. So I would highly recommend that book. Her name was Elizabeth Smith Friedman. And her husband went on to be considered the founder of the NSA, and there's a building named after him. So very, very interesting history that you don't hear much about. So I'd recommend.
Was that the woman who smashed codes?
Smashed codes. And that one is on the book discussions on the 21st with John Harris. And it is also available with Hoopla, both ebook and audiobook. And the author of that one is Jason Fagone, F-A-G-O-N-E. I highly recommend that. If you know anyone who likes the history books, you always get a good niche group for those discussions. So let them know. So that's it. But watch that 12th Night. It's really interesting production, modern.
Next week is Frankenstein.
Is it?
Ah.
Oh, that'll be fun.
The one where they flipped the roles. So they're gonna do one night.
Yeah, with Benedict Cumberbatch, if you're a fan of him like I am.
Yeah.
And Johnny Lee Miller.
So who's next?
I'll go next. This is Kathy, even though I'm coming up under Carl Rausch because I'm using the computer. And that's how it's registered. It's under my husband's name. I just got this yesterday. I cheated and ordered through Amazon. It's called Leave Only Footprints, and it's by Conor Knighton. And it talks about, he's a CBS Sunday morning correspondent, and it talks about his year going to every single national park in the whole entire United States. And it's not like a travel log, but he talks about the parks that are working on. I'm only on like page 70, so I'm not that far in the book yet, but he talks about how one of the national parks 20 miles off the coast of Florida is in Biscayne Bay, and the coral reefs down there. And then he talks another part about the national parks that are saving some of the endangered animals. And it's just a different take on what the national parks are doing. But it's really good, and it's a fast read on that. And then the other book that I just finished before I started this one was All the Stars in Heaven by Adriana Pagani. It's been out for a while, and it was just on my pile of books, and that's what I finished reading. I like historical fiction, and I also like anything to do with the national parks. And that's all I have to say.
I guess I could go next if that's okay with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The book that I read most recently is called The Snow Collectors. This is a copy of the cover. You can take a look at that. The Snow Collectors, it's by author named Tina May Hall. She lives in upstate New York, and she's written several short stories that have been published. So this was her debut novel. And the story is about a woman named Henna, and she is a writer of encyclopedia entries. I didn't know that was a job anymore, but I think it's great. Henna's parents and her twin sister were lost at sea, and she moves north to get away from people and to hide with her grief. But then a murdered woman turns up in the bushes outside of Henna's house, and the woman is clutching an antique scrap of a letter. Hannah proceeds to investigate the mystery of this murdered woman, and it leads her to archival information, which of course she finds at her local library. And it's about the ill-fated Arctic expedition of Captain John Franklin in 1854. So there is a historical aspect to this book. So while she's trying to solve the mystery of the murdered woman, this of course means that Hannah is putting herself in danger, because it seems that everybody in the area has something to hide, of course. Even the chief of police, who she has a love interest with. But the investigation is also helping Hannah come out of her self-isolation. So this book has a lot of really interesting characters in it. There's police procedural things in it. There's a mansion. There's collecting practices that are found in this book, which is set in the not too distant future, but it's a time when birds and bees and the glaciers have all disappeared. One reviewer calls this setting a snowpocalypse, but it's always snowing there, and Hannah likes that. That's why she's living there. So I like this book because it is a mix of genres. It's part mystery. There's a steampunk element to it. It can also be called a Gothic novel. And there's that dystopian sort of thing where, you know, the world has changed. I like books like that. I enjoy them. And this book can be read by young adults or adults. It's a pretty fast read. And the writer does a really good job with the prose. And the writing sometimes is just really beautiful. So it has a lot to offer. But the things I wrote a list of the things I liked most about the book. And it has an inquisitive lead female character that has flaws and heartbreak. That she's trying to work that all out. There's that historical element, which is built around the failed, which is a real historical event, the failed Franklin Arctic expedition. And that fuels the whole story, actually. There's the Gothic element in it, which I love stuff about Gothic, including, and we all want one of these, a library with a tower room. That would be really nice, where you could sit and read. But unfortunately, Hannah gets locked in there, and I've thought of worse places to be locked in, to be honest with you. So, but also there are really quirky characters, and that really kind of fuels the story too. Not just what the story is about, but the people that are part of the story and move the story along. And lastly, one of the reasons I like it is there's a basset hound who's named Rembrandt, and he acts just like Rembrandt's and basset hounds act. So he was stubborn. He followed his nose. You know, he was part of the mystery. So that was pretty cool. But one of the other things that is cool about what the libraries offer, I have to put a plug in for the library, of course, is that we are able to get to a site called Novelist. And when I went into Novelist, this book came up, of course. This book was published in February 2020. But there were also other books and authors that are similar to this book and this author. So if you like this book, you can go to Novelist and find other books that are similar. So there's a bunch out there, some that you might have read. One in particular, The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton is similar. Slade House by David Mitchell. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. So there's all kinds of ways to expand your reading if you're liking the book that you just recently read. So I would recommend this book. It was a fast read, which is nice. You know, a chapter or two right before you fall asleep is perfect. So it worked out really well. I hope you'll pick it up sometime when we open up again.
Well, I can reiterate that I'm working through my way a 1,200 page book of Outlander, Echo in the Bone. And luckily I got stars for free at some point during this pandemic, so I could watch some of the Outlander series, which is also wonderful. Although I have to say that Jamie doesn't look like what I imagined him to look like in my head when I was reading the books. I imagined him much larger than the guy who's playing him.
Is he better looking or worse or more so-so looking?
I think the guy who's playing him in the series is a more polished looking guy than I imagined in my head.
I just started watching it again.
Yeah, it's great. I've watched it through Netflix, and now this free stars taste that I got was also really nice. But I started listening to the books with book one when I lived in Sturgeon Bay and was traveling to Ephraim for work. And the person who read them did a fabulous job with the different accents, because Claire is British, and then there's the Scottish Highlander, and there's some Irish in there too sometimes. And then they go to Jamaica, and then you've got the Jamaican accents. If you don't know Outlander, it's a historical sci-fi, I guess you would call it, but it's based on the true historic events that happened in the 1700s. But these Scottish, this British lady goes through these stones, like Stonehenge kind of, in Scotland, and she falls back into history in the 1700s. She's a time traveler, she discovers, and has gone between times, a couple times during the book series, as has her daughter. So it's a very interesting, because I like sci-fi, I like history, it combines them, and I highly suggest listening to the audiobook. It's great with the accents. The woman who reads it is wonderful, but then it gets to like book 6, or I can't remember which book, and they change readers. It's not the same person who reads it, and it's just not the same anymore. So that's why I switched to reading the hard copy books now, which takes me longer.
Good to know. I did that too. I watched it first, didn't know about the books, and then I got into season 2 and I looked it up to start reading it, and I found on Hoopla there's a story by the author about how she got it into production TV-wise, which was very interesting. And then she started mentioning some things that she was making sure was in the miniseries, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm like, I'm not watching anymore. I'm reading all the books. And then I got stuck like on that drums. I think I got to the end of that, and then I'm like, I can't take dying anymore, or almost dying. I had to take a break. So
yeah,
the audiobooks are great.
The audiobooks are on RB Digital too, right? For anyone who can't get a library copy right now.
Oh, I didn't know. Good to know.
Could be.
Some of them are there, I'm sure.
All right. It looks like we only have about 10 minutes left before they're going to kick us out of the meeting. So I apologize for that. Is there another book that anyone wants to do a call out for that you didn't get a chance to talk about? Beth.
Oh, I will talk about this one. I have been reading this series by Patricia Briggs. It's the Mercy Thompson series, and it is urban fantasy. So this one that I'm reading is Smoke Bitten. You can't see it because of the background. It's all weird. But this is her brand new one. It's book 12 in the series. Don't start with book 12. But these are all really wonderful. So it's urban fantasy. She's a shapeshifter, and the fairies are real, and they are not nice. and she gets involved with a werewolf pack that lives in. It takes place in northwestern United States, in the Tri-Cities area. So it's a really fun book. Mercy's got Mercy Thompson. She is an auto mechanic, works only on Volkswagens, and she is she's tough. She's got serious things in her history where she's got her faults, but she keeps plugging away at things. Unlike the werewolves that she lives with, she's not aware of anything. She's a shapeshifter. She shifts into a coyote, and it makes a huge difference for some. It's the Mercy Thompson series. I've got it on the what's it here. I can do the chat. Did I write it down? I started to write it down. I'll put it in afterwards. So no, it's Patricia Briggs, Briggs, and it's Mercy Thompson, Thompson, and it's really fun. It's fast, it's entertaining. That's right. It's fast and it's entertaining, and I really enjoy it. I've been following it for all 12 books, and I used one of the pieces of InfoSoup to be able to get notice every time a new one of hers comes out, so I got on the list really early.
All right. Anyone else want to take a couple of minutes just to talk about their book really quick?
I'll go if anyone's interested. Has anyone heard of this? Is one of Oprah's picks, American.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm not very far yet, but this book is about a woman. She owns a bookstore in Mexico. They're in Acapulco. She's got a little boy, and her husband's a journalist. The Mexican cartel, her husband somehow gets involved with the Mexican cartel, and they're having a party at their house, and her husband and all kinds of family are killed while her and her son are in the house. So they end up sneaking away, and they go and live underground, and the whole book is about different places they end up in Mexico. So I'm not that far yet, but it's very, very interesting. Strong woman, mother for the character. So,
Great.
little 2 cents on that.
Well, I want to just let everyone know that we are going to plan on doing this type of social distancing book club every Friday at 2. So until we're allowed to come back together again. So if you didn't get a chance to talk today, or if you get cut off because we only have about 5 minutes left, feel free, remember to come back next week and talk about your book. So with that, does anyone want to take the last handle here and talk about what they are reading?
Tracy, what are you reading?
I didn't want to jump in case anyone had something, but I did just finish for the Bailey's Harbor Book Club, Becoming Michelle Obama. And I did the audio. I did kind of a combination of the book and the audio, as I often do, but she reads it for the audio, which is kind of nice. And we're going to be doing a discussion on that May 6th, I believe is the date. But also, as many have said, like I sometimes doing this have a hard time concentrating. So this is not something I would normally read, but Stephen King, Elevation, I picked because it came highly recommended, and it's really short. So I've just started that, and it's a mystery, but not as gruesome as some of his can be. So I've been really enjoying it. What's that?
You said Stephen King Evolution, you said?
Elevation.
Elevation.
Real well,
Okay.
Elevation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think it's backwards. Is it backwards? Yeah. I'm also reading with my son. We're doing a little family book club of New Kid, and this won the Newbery recently. And it's a graphic novel, but it's a juvenile graphic novel, and it's really good. So if you need like an introduction, if you've never done a graphic novel before, this is kind of a good easy one to get into. It's called New Kid by Jerry Craft. So he's finished already, so I have to catch up so we can have our little discussion with it.
What age is that for? What age?
It's juvenile. The main character is in 7th grade. So I think middle school is the best age. My son is 10, and he found it enjoyable. So.
I would think 10 would be about as young as you'd want to go on that.
Probably,
but 10,
probably. 15? Have you read it, Beth?
I flipped through it. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing.
Great. Well, if you haven't, please take a moment and just type the name of your title into the Zoom chat, and I'll post that in the Facebook event. So if there's any title that intrigued you but you didn't get a chance to write down the name or the author, you can look back at the event and get the information there. So I just want to
typing
say
it into my
you.
Goodreads.
Good idea, Anne.
Yeah, Goodreads app. It's great for keeping track of the books you want to read at some point in your life.
Or what you've already read.
Or what you've already read.
Yes.
And I would say just keep watching our Facebook page and on our website, so the doorcountylibrary.org. And we're going to be posting new events that we have going on and any other information about curbside pickup that might be starting and other details like that. So just watch our social media and website and we'll get the information out to everyone.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prudence. Thank you.
Everyone.
It was good to see everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
It is, yeah. And there's some sunshine, so we can be happy for that.
It's going to be a nice
Yay.
weekend. Really nice weekend.
Yay, it's time for a hike.
But 6 feet apart. No.
With masks on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye,
All
everybody.
right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.